All right, we're live. Hi, everyone.
Hello, hello.
Hello.
Oh, quite a few people are already here. All right. As usual, we'll give everybody a few minutes to arrive. We have our speakers here already. Carlos and I here as well, as you can tell. Hi, Laura. So we'll give 5 minutes to arrive to everyone, and in between, we'll do a quick warm up as usual. Arvind. Oh no, sorry, Arvind. Sorry, read that wrong. We do have an Arvind as well. So what we usually do at the very beginning is that we ask everyone to let us know where you're listening or tuning in from. So, for example, you can see on my hat, I'm from Washington, D.C. Well, I used to live there. I'm now based in France. Carlos, who is my co-host, is based in Portugal. Oliver is in London, UK. And Julia is in Milan. Yes, okay, I got that right. Well, while we're waiting, I want to tell you guys about some of the upcoming webinars that we have already scheduled for the rest of the year. So, if you're not the first time attendee of our webinars, you know that we've done a whole series on carbon offset monitoring as of now, mostly focusing on forest. So the next one is actually going to focus on another hot subject that has been really all over the news by now: blue carbon. So that webinar is going to happen in October. We already have two prominent speakers registered for that. Both of them have very extensive background in marine ecosystems. We'll be releasing that webinar, the registration for that webinar on Monday. So if you're following us on social media, please register them. If you're not following us, please follow, and you'll be able to register ASAP. Then in November, we are going to release a big research project that we have commissioned from an independent observer of Earth observation and geospatial industry. So the research is going to be about all the pros and cons of using various solutions when it comes to satellite data. So we're talking about, for example, accessing raw data, using vertical specific solutions, or a vertical agnostic platform like ours. So there's going to be a webinar hosted to go over that research. And then last but not least, December, we're going to come back to the forest, sort of, and we're going to do a second webinar that will go over the regulation that went into power about a year ago from now, EUDR, European Union Deforestation Regulation, that has replaced EUTR. And this is going to be our second webinar on that subject. And we have a couple of speakers confirmed for that as well. They have very extensive ESG backgrounds. So guys, hopefully you are as pumped for those webinars as we are, and you'll be able to register for them fairly quickly, because we'll be releasing the registration links quite soon for all of them. 5 minutes are out, so I'm going to turn over to Carlos. Carlos, please.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. So I will introduce to you our speakers today. So first we have Julia Burki, our friend here. Julia is Impact and Project Manager at Green Future Project, which is a prominent partner from at Orbify with us. So a big partner of Orbify. So Green Future Project is a climate tech Green Future Project. We have a lot of different projects there, from connecting developers and funding, right, Julia? From SMBs to enterprise and even individuals. So Green Future Project is one of our biggest partners, and we have the honor to have Julia today with us here. And as you probably know from our latest webinar, we have Oliver Levers here, our Earth or observation engineer, again. And yeah, and that's it. And just to start warm up, everyone, I will release a quick poll. And I would like your participation. Let's see here. Yep, it's now live, the first poll. So guys, see, yeah, 2 answers, increasing. Cool. So guys, keep an eye on the polls, because during the presentations we will have more to keep our conversation live. So I think that's all for now. We can start, right? Oliver, Olia, anything else before starting the presentations?
Maybe yes, a quick admin moment that basically there's usually a Q&A after each presentation. So you can put the questions in the chat as we go, and the speakers will take them after the presentation is done. So I think that concludes the intro and the warm-up. And Oliver, the floor is all yours.
Right, to the presentation. Let's see if this works now. Go on. Right, anyone see my presentation? Yes.
Yes.
Good.
Yep,
right.
all good.
Okay, so yeah, sorry about that, technical difficulties. Yeah, so I'm Ollie. I think if you were here in the last webinar, yeah, you'll know me at least once. I'm one of the Earth observation engineers at Orbify, and I was just wanted to give a presentation about how you can use the platform and remote sensing to evaluate some of the project claims made by some of the carbon offsetting projects that you may be working with or working on or buying from or selling potentially. So yeah, so if you've been looking at the news following the developments in carbon offsetting projects, you'll be aware that there is some controversy about the effectiveness of certain projects, and potentially there are quite a lot of low quality projects on the market. You know, it's a big question at the moment. You know, how do we improve the transparency of these projects? How can we assess these projects, make sure that they are real? And Orbify, we're not a ratings agency, so I'm not here to tell you how to assess these projects, but more about the tools that you can use to share with your customers or your clients to say, look, we've done the due diligence on our projects and we think this or that, because there are good projects out there, despite what some of the headlines might say. Well, that was a bit too opinionated, sorry. Okay, so what do we need to know about these projects? And in terms of climate integrity, which is the thing I'll be covering today, rather than some of the other co-benefits such as biodiversity and the community co-benefits that some of these projects provide, I'll be talking about the sort of how do you show that these offsets are real, measurable, additional, and permanent. And when you get into these projects, you quickly come across terms like additionality, which is the key one, I think, that most of you will be interested in. You know, there's a lot of conversation around, are projects additional? Are they providing real certainly within the emissions reductions projects, the avoided deforestation projects, are these projects additional? So in this fictional scenario made using emojis, we can see that the forest is preserved with the project, and so is additional, because without the project, we would have seen this land turned into wood and agricultural products, for example. It's a simple concept. So yeah, I hope I explained that properly. It's basically just saying, would those trees exist, or would these emissions exist? Sorry, these emissions reductions exist without the project being there. So behind that is a lot of complexity, and a lot of that comes from the idea that we have to be able to prove that without the project happening, something else would have occurred that would have been effectively worse than what the project is trying to do. And the way we do that is we create a baseline, often called like a counterfactual, and that is a scenario where deforestation would have occurred, and it kind of looks like this. So in our example, with the project in place, our forest area would have remained pretty high, but without the project, you would get more deforestation. And the difference between these two scenarios provides you with the ability to say that you've provided some carbon offsetting capacity. So this is where the offset's generated from. And this is an important thing to get right, and it's something that can be kind of contentious in projects. And it's because, how do you develop this baseline? Well, often people use a reference region, which is a region which has very similar characteristics to the project area. And you use what's happening in that reference region to essentially say what would have happened in the project area. And reference regions are difficult to find in certain circumstances because the landscape is a very complex place, and in order to say that what would happen in this reference region would be the same as the project area, you have to demonstrate that they're very similar in things like the land use or the pressures of deforestation or the type of trees that are there or some of those landscape characteristics. There's another important term that we have to be familiar with, which is leakage. And leakage is the idea that if you build a project and you stop people coming to cut down trees in a project area, this little purple devil with his saw may move to another area and create exactly the same emissions, but just doing it in a different place. And this is another seemingly simple consideration, but it can become more complicated, especially in areas which see high rates of deforestation. And we might touch on why that is. Just as well to say, I put geographic in brackets because there are other forms of leakage. Geographic leakage is this kind of leakage where project activities are displaced and moved to another area. Non-permanence is also a big issue. Those of you in the risk analysis space may be very familiar with non-permanence. So it's the idea that trees may not remain as trees for the entirety of the planned project. So things can happen, natural disasters, pests and diseases. We're familiar with the big problems with wildfires we had a few months ago. There were issues where carbon offsetting projects lost their buffer here. So sometimes trees can go up in smoke, and the risks caused by climate change are becoming more and more scary, I suppose. And so we have to be aware that there are risks in certain projects like that. So again, being careful not to become a ratings agency, there are certain things that you can look out for. So within the project area, there are certain things that projects may do. So they may not report the total deforestation that is happening in the project area. They may change the project area to select trees that are still there. It may be that forest was never at risk and there was no argument for additionality. It may be that there was, this is a timber plantation that's simply regrowing its trees, and it's business as usual. There are also cases which are trickier to pick out, which are that the carbon calculations are not quite accurate. And this can occur, for example, if you have a allometric equation for a tree species in one region and you apply it to a region which is very different, you can get different values of carbon sequestration from those equations. So that kind of factors into the fact that, there's also poor baseline models as well that show higher rates of deforestation than may be considered realistic. And this can happen. Some of the ones to look out for. And I think I've touched on already, that the reference region may not be representative of the project. So it may have completely different characteristics. It may be in a different place. There may be different trees. And so this is an important thing to do, is to understand what the reference region is and how they have used it to generate a baseline for the additionality assessment. So some small indicators of quality could include being conservative in the way that baselines are generated. Having accurate deforestation projections could be a indicator that a project's doing well. And minimum permanence risk, which is means that those forests are highly likely to stay for the project duration and not be wiped off the map by fire or flood or anything like that. So Carlos, I think, is now going to put another poll in the, I'll just switch back to the view where I can see everyone. Yeah, has that gone up? Aspects of projects yeah, there we are. So if you could, we'd love to hear from you. We're really interested to see what your interests are in regards to assessing projects and their quality. Yeah, so please leave comments if you have something that is not included in the poll. We're a bit limited with the number of characters we can use in the poll. So, right. So how can we assess a project? Well, any of you who've delved into the literature regarding project descriptions, that kind of thing, know that you're often faced with 100+ pages of text, not particularly engaging to read sometimes, and sometimes information may be missing or difficult to find. However, there are things you can do, and there are ways to conduct due diligence using the information in those reports. And but it is worth saying, do not oversimplify. There are certain points within project descriptions which can point to the nuances of certain projects which are worth considering. I think can be overlooked. Here are some of the methodologies that are often applied to nature-based solutions. I know I'm talking mostly about RED+ and avoided deforestation style projects as a default, and this is the kind of project tend to be the kind of projects we're looking at. But these are some of the methodologies that can be used. It's very easy to get confused and put off by trying to conduct assessments on these projects because they're so complicated, but you'll find that the majority of them use very similar certification methodologies. This is an interesting blog written by Hammer Kopp. I don't know what they are. Hammer Kopp, probably said that wrong. That shows that most of the emissions come from a few methodologies. That's to say the methodologies are changing sometimes and new ones are added. Yeah, don't panic. This is not just for me, but remember that most methods have similar concepts, and you can draw on those to develop a way to conduct due diligence. And of course, remote sensing data can help. So as a way of demonstrating what you can do, I have a small example of assessing claims by a RED project. So these are some of the things you can do. Can we check that the forest is, so that the project may have additionality present, maybe the forest is at risk, is seeing risk currently, and that may suggest that there is a reason to protect that forest. You can look at the project performance. I think it's safe to say that if there's no forest left on the land that's meant to be protected, that project's probably performing quite badly. We can look at the leakage areas, and we can look at the characteristics of the reference areas, and combined you can start to build a picture of the project and try to assess whether you think its claims are realistic or not. And for those of you who haven't ever delved into the registry at Vera, it's often difficult to get just the geographic coordinates as a shapefile or KML, trying to find what are the boundaries of this project boundary, what are the boundaries of this project. Sometimes it's difficult and not there, and sometimes and often you will not be given the geographic coordinates of the reference region or the leakage area. I think this may be something that changes in the future, but yeah, this is a big problem for transparency. We don't always have the data we need. So this is what it looks like. You can make a few clicks and you can select a project. I decided to pick on this Kiosima Wildlife Sanctuary in Cambodia. Potentially some of you are familiar with this project, and look at some of the claims made in the project description. This is what it looks like. And just again, to reiterate, we're not a ratings company. I'm not making any suggestions as to whether this is a good project or not, but I'm just trying to provide some information which may show you how you may wish to estimate that for yourself. So this is the project. Fortunately, it has the KML available, and we can then upload that directly to the Orbify platform. And so this is what you may see on the Orbify platform. This is the project boundary as provided by the Vera database. If you look through the project description, it's slightly more complicated. This is a simplified version which encompasses some of the leakage areas, but you can see straight away that there has been some deforestation in red since the project began, and this may be or may not be problematic. So 2010 is the project start date, and we can use the Hansen Global Forest Dynamics dataset to monitor, to look at the historic forest loss, and we can see that there's been a sort of increase in deforestation in the project area after the project start. What about outside the project area? Now, I mentioned that sometimes the leakage area is not provided, and but in the Orbify platform, you can generate a buffer around your AOI. And at the bottom here, this is the border with Cambodia, sorry, Vietnam, and this is removed. But you essentially get an analog to the leakage area, and it overlaps quite nicely with what's in the project description. The key point here is, though, you can see that there has been forest loss in the leakage area around the project, and here again, displayed as a graph, that's what's happening in the leakage area. So this suggests that leakage is going on. Here's, you can do some visual assessments to verify what's going on. So clearly, small roads. These are the arteries, for some of the deforestation that goes on in some of these projects. So you can see here that around this road here, this is within the leakage area, by the way, there has been some quite significant deforestation. So within the project description, you can look out for the projections that they made for the baseline scenario, and we can pick these up, and we have here the results. So we can see in blue, this is the projections provided by the project description of the expected deforestation if the project wasn't there. So this is the baseline scenario. And with the platform, we can see the annual deforestation is lower than the proposed baseline scenario. So this is showing that potentially something's going well within this project. The leakage area, however, is a different story. Although the leakage area is not exactly the same, it seems that the baseline scenario for the leakage is very similar to what we observe. So it suggests that leakage is a problem. The reference area is a bit more of a complicated story. The reference area is large. The purple here is what they provided as historic measurements of deforestation. They reported a spike here, which they didn't use in their projection, this is the projection here, which is later used to create a baseline. A little bit complicated, so I won't get into that, but we can see that what we've observed with the Orbify platform is quite high deforestation after this these historic measurements were made in the project description. And so this is not all of the reference region, but this is representative. Our project area, I think you can see there's a little, I hope you can see my mouse as well, there's a Kiyosima label here. Our project area lies within this region here, and this is just to indicate the level of deforestation that's occurring over time. So you can see, that was the level that's the forest we have in 2000, and we can see there's quite considerable, scary, horrible deforestation going on there. And our project area is sitting around here, so you can see that there is, it's safe to say, the deforestation pressure in this area, and this project area is maintaining forest. So maybe a good story. So what else can we learn? So I don't know how long have I got? Anyone able to shout out? Oh, last time was over by about 5 minutes, but just.
You're good. You can keep going for another 3 minutes.
Cool. So just so we are currently developing a platform and a template which can be generated using indicators that you are interested in, and yes, I hope to demo that. So if I switch to this tab, share this tab instead. Oops. Can you see this new tab? Oops.
Yep, all good.
Okay, so this is a sort of quick thing we've generated, which shows the new Orbify platform, the way we'll be generating reports. So you could have any of your projects on your website to share with your clients, to share with your customers, and you could demo that you've done the due diligence with the project that you're offering offsets credits from, and you can have all of the information presented here. You can look at where the deforestation has occurred, for example. You can present the animated deforestation going on in here. We have these custom risk scores that we can generate for different. I quickly moved the case. This is the risk score, total risk score, and a lot of different factors go into creating a risk map, including proximity to settlements. It was found that the road here was not a big indicator. There's no deforestation either side of this road, for example. We have maps of fire and burn areas, and we can look out for non-permanence risk. Here is one which is it's showing the risk due to drought, for example, and then we get the historical forest loss. Not included in this one is the leakage area as well, and you can include a reference area. So you could build a big picture around a project using this platform. And if there are indicators that you would like to, oops, can you see me? I've stopped sharing my screen.
Yep,
so if you are interested in using this kind of functionality and you would like to see different indicators or have different things integrated into the platform, we'd love to hear from you. So this is the kind of thing you can do to demonstrate you've done the due diligence on those projects. So that's me. How was I for time? I think I had to.
Great. Thanks, Oliver. You're our rock star. And I think because I hard you up a little bit by saying you've only got 3 minutes, you skip the part where it basically shows how fast it's done on the platform. So we know from our partners and customers that sometimes it takes you weeks and even months to get all that data rolling for the PDD. On Orbify, it just literally takes you a few clicks and a few minutes to load all this data. So humble brag about our platform. Oliver, I think your presentation was fantastic, and I'm not just saying that because you work with me, but I think it was truly a really good overview. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it as well. We're going to open the floor up for the questions. So everybody who's watching, the floor is all yours in the chat area. All right, the first question. How are you evaluating deforestation? Which data sets are you using?
So we're using the historical deforestation. We're using the what is it called? Global forest, the one developed by Hansen. It's 30-meter resolution.
Global Forest Watch?
No, it's on the Global Forest Watch site. What is it called? That's for historic. I'll go back to you when my brain declouds. And then for monitoring purposes, we have a
Global Forest Change.
Global Forest Change. Thank you. And then we have a different set of data sets that we can use for monitoring going forward, which is at higher resolution. So we have our own in-house algorithm, which uses a variety of data sets like Sentinel-2 and Sentinel-1 data to look at forest cover over different years. And we also can use dynamic world data set, which can give us different land use classifications as well. So yeah, we have different products depending on what you want, essentially. You can, going back in time, looking at historic data sets, it's how to use slightly low resolution products. How do you verify? Sorry.
Yeah, sure. So the next one is, how do you verify or validate your assessments and predictions?
So we are being very careful in that we don't want to tell people how to use this tool. We're not a ratings agency. We just want to provide you with the information that allows you to make the decisions yourself. So if we're talking about how do we verify that you're talking about how we verify that our data is correct, we provide an uncertainty and around some of our measurements. But yeah, started answering the question twice in two different ways. So how do you verify, validate your assessments and predictions? Yeah, it depends what you mean. So we do have quality indicators for our measurements and our data, but in terms of the sort of information that we provide, we don't sort of verify the sort of claims that we make using the tool, if that makes sense. Sorry, I hope I understood correctly.
Did that, Hammond, did that answer a question, please? While Hammond is getting back to us in the chat, I'm going to take the question about EUDR. Thank you, Andrea. So, well, it definitely made satellite data a lot more popular, to tell you this. Just to quickly basically update everyone on the timeline, so there is some background to that. So the law went into force December 2022, and it gave the regulation gave 18 months to the companies to comply. So we can tell you, for example, that right now they have about 8 months left to start complying, and this is when and now the companies are starting to wake up and reach out to providers such as ourselves to see how the actual solution is going to look like. The thing is, it's not exactly specified in the text of the regulation how the certification or the certificate with the satellite data is supposed to look like. That is demanded to be included in the due diligence. So I guess that leaves a little bit of room for interpretation. But overall, obviously, it's a big precedent for saying that satellite data might also be demanded to be included in larger outlets, for example, in ESG reporting moving forward. So clearly, that was a good thing for companies like ours. We got a question from Clovis. Which data set are you using for the carbon stock estimation? It's above ground biomass, or also including below ground and soil organic carbon?
So we use a product called, I think it's the ESA CCI biomass, above ground biomass data set for above ground biomass. Below ground biomass is more tricky. We don't have a product for that yet, but there are ways to, I think most of the time people use an R value or a ratio above ground biomass to below ground biomass for species. So we could build a solution around that. And we also are implementing currently a soil organic matter, soil organic carbon data set, I think based off the soil grids data set. So we do have solutions for those, but they're not there yet. They're in the pipeline. I hope that answers that question.
There is a question from Laura. What's the temporal resolution? Can you update your data every month?
Yeah, that depends on which data set. We have a forest monitoring data set that can be updated very, very regularly. I think it's a monthly or sorry. Brain's frazzled now. So yeah, our forest non-forest product, which we developed ourselves, has a very high temporal resolution, very high spatial scale, and that can be used for monitoring purposes. And I think that the latest was a monthly product. I have to get back to you on that one. I'm sorry, but I think it's a monthly one. The biomass data set is the ESA CCI biomass map. Yeah, reach out to us if you would like more information on that one.
There is a follow-up question from Hammond, basically saying that to some extent you answered his previous question, but he was wondering how, or even if you evaluate the uncertainty on your own, do you also gather training data? And they're actually one of our users already.
Yeah, thank you for the nice review there. So it depends on the data sets. We do generate uncertainties from some of the data sets, provide uncertainty maps with products, so we can use those to provide uncertainties. And it depends on the data set and what we're looking at, how we provide uncertainties. Yeah, I hope that helps in some way. If you want specific information regarding specific data sets, I'd reach out to our team who can provide more detail about individual data sets and how they're used. Yeah.
And you can also actually, once you become the user on Orbify, you can click on a little eye icon and it will show you which data set and how it's being used. I think it seems like we're over with the questions for now. Thank you, Oliver, once again, and thank you everybody for asking very specific questions. Just like Oliver said in his presentation, our tool, any other tool, or satellite data in general can be used for both project evaluation and project monitoring. There is actually a follow-up question about detecting deforestation. The biggest challenge in detecting deforestation today, in my opinion, is detecting degradation before it becomes deforestation. How do you tackle that?
I think this is a really, really interesting question. I think there was a paper, wasn't there, that said that degradation in some of these areas, outstrip the impact in the Amazon, for example, in some of the RED projects in the Amazon, outstrip the the deforestation in some cases. So yeah, it's a really interesting problem. How do we detect degradation? We have a bunch of solutions, again, in development. We can monitor, for example, the change in canopy height, or our FNF because of the higher forest non-forest product, because of the higher spatial resolution, maybe be able to detect patches of degradation. But yeah, we don't have a solution for that quite yet that we're ready to say, use this. But yeah, really great question, and hopefully, yeah, we'll get something for that soon.
With that, I'm going to turn over to Julia, who is going to speak specifically about that.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know what is happening. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen and tell me if you can see my screen.
Yep, all good.
Okay, cool. So welcome everyone, and thank you, Olia, and to the whole team of Orbify for inviting us today. I'm Julia, Impact Manager of Green Future Project. And Green Future Project is a SaaS solution that enables companies to play an active role in reversing climate change. So we support them to measure, reduce, and offset their carbon emissions. And our project portfolio is focused on nature-based solutions, the category of projects that put nature as a key player and which is proven to be one of the most cost-effective solutions to halt climate change, while concretely supporting the natural ecosystems. And the project we select includes adaptation and mitigation actions and are divided into these 4 categories that you can see on the screen. So we have the restoration, meaning that we act where ecosystems need support to restore their natural balance, such as planting mangroves. Preservation, meaning that we act where conservation and preservation efforts are needed. For example, when we have a forest at the edge of deforestation. Then we have also renewable energy, because we truly believe that for a quicker and more effective transition to a decarbonized economy, we need to invest also in these kind of solutions. And then we have the marine restoration, that are all the projects related to the life under the sea. So, for example, as coral restoration and seaweed restoration and this kind of projects. This is how our impact is globally spreading around the world. We select projects following a specific methodology and criteria. We first choose which project typology we want to add to our portfolio. So whether it is restoration, preservation, marine projects, or renewable, following the urgency of the action needed for a certain natural issue, such as deforestation. Then we select the region which is most affected by the negative effect of the problem. And finally, we select the NGOs that are more in need of funds to scale their positive solution and that actually can really help for that specific problem or issue that we identified. And a project to be added to our portfolio needs to create benefits for biodiversity, local communities, and climate, meaning that the project needs to be capable of CO2 absorption or emission avoidance, meaning that it needs to help biodiversity flourish again or to protect biodiversity, and, for example, create job opportunities for local communities. At Green Future Project, we decided to diversify our project portfolio with both certified and science-backed projects, because we truly believe that the quality of a project falls far beyond its link to carbon credits market. And here is a small recap of the difference. And we all know that carbon offsetting can come from the purchase of carbon credits that are present on the global market, and they are included into the gold standard or better registry, and they are, these bodies actually certify that certain project activities are able to avoid or reduce greenhouse gas emissions from the atmosphere, and in this way they contribute to halt or mitigate climate change. While science-backed projects are the ones whose carbon absorption or avoidance is scientifically proven, but they are not linked to the carbon credit market. So, their capacity of avoiding the release of carbon into the atmosphere or the capacity to absorb the carbon is proved and it's happening, but they are just not linked to the carbon credits market. And we actually decided to put both because of the reason I explained to you previously. And today, offsetting activities are spreading across all over industries and companies, and there is an increasing demand of carbon credits. We are all well aware of the carbon credits market flows, and besides being as informed as possible, transparency is key when it comes to understand if the investment made is being truly effective. And being 100% transparent is a core value for a Green Future project. So this is why we decided to integrate satellite imagery to our projects. And this not only helps users to monitor in real time the status of the project they financed, but it supports us in keeping track of the actual progress of the project. And this applies to carbon credit projects as well as to the science-backed ones, because monitoring nature-based solutions raises some issues that satellite imagery can solve, showing key data as forest ratio or deforestation rates in real time. We found Orbify extremely helpful for us, and we noticed how our users benefit from it, both from an engagement point of view and a financial point of view, because it raises awareness and strengthens the transparency, giving the right reassurance about the investment made. And I think that nature-based solutions will need more tools like these in order to truly become the most powerful tool we have to halt the climate crisis. And I wanted to show you also how we actually integrated Orbify within our website to help the user have, visibility over the project they funded so far. So here you have some drone videos of the project. This is the Narupa Reserve. It's a forest reserve in Ecuador. So it's a conservation project that we actually support. And here below, you can find the integration of Orbify data. The part in green is the reserve area that is fragmented in this way because the foundation we work with, this Fundación Hokotoko, is trying to expand reserve, buying portion of land from private owners, and it's trying to build a whole corridor, ecological corridor. So this is why you see patches like this, because they're trying to actually unify all the areas. And here on the left, there is a column where we have all the key data that we want to show. like the total area of the forest ratio, the maintained forest area, where is the forest loss and gained, the median canopy height, the above ground biomass, the average surface temperature, average humidity, forest loss by year. And these help us not only to understand if the NGO and the project are working correctly, but it also helps user, as I said previously, to really have an overview of what the investment made so far is concretely being effective. And here the user can play around with different data that can be ghosted or shown, the deforestation period, if we want like a period that goes from 2011 to 2014 to maybe compare it with the period of deforestation that is from 2020. And everything shows on the platform. And for us, we really notice that users love this kind of tool because it gives really the idea of being concretely connected to the project that they're funding, and they can trust the project developers, they can trust us, and also attract more maybe stakeholders or users to what they are doing as when it comes to nature-based solutions investments and projects investments. So I think that I'm done. I don't know if there are any questions, or Olia, if you want to add something about our partnership.
No, I think this is a great example that demonstrates that you guys pretty much went ahead of the curve in terms of adding an additional layer of transparency. And because you and I spoke about this recently, I remember that you said that some of the clients were already asking for this, but overall it was mostly driven by the basically the overall trajectory of the market, where transparency is becoming a more acute subject day by day, basically.
Yes, exactly. It's like that. I mean, we noticed that while we were going autonomously in that direction of the transparency that we wanted to highlight even more into our website, we noticed our users and potential clients were actually asking for it. So we noticed this like merging path that was towards the transparency, above all related to nature-based solutions and to carbon credits projects, because of the, kind of what mentioned Oliver previously, all the scandals about the Vera project, about understanding if the investment made is being really effective or not. And so a tool like Orbify can really shed a light over what is a nature-based solution and how a project is actually making progress towards what we think are the projections of the project.
Makes sense. Andrea is showing some congrats for your presentation. And he's also asking how many projects are you financing worldwide?
We are now financing 14 projects all over the world, and we are planning to add even more before the end of the year. So we are in an expansion phase of our portfolio.
Okay, thanks, Oliver, because I was about to read that question. Yes, thank you. So that's the JEDI data set. I have received one question privately, actually. The question is, okay, this is for Julia. Did the, okay, sorry, trying to read this quite long. Okay, so basically they're asking if the satellite data has been helpful for you in terms of initiating the project fundraising, or have you mostly been using it in the monitoring efforts?
No, of course, it's like a combined thing that we noticed. I mean, it helped us to gain funds for the project, and at the same time, it helped us also for the monitoring part. So it's like a 50-50 thing of the all use that we do of Orbify. So it's quite an engaging tool that really attracts investor, and at the same time it helps us to monitor what is happening, because we of course monitor like every 2 weeks what is happening, and so that in the case we notice something that is different from what we expected, we can contact the project developer and ask what is happening, and they can give us some answers and everything. So it's like a 50-50 thing.
Gotcha. And do you have both conservation and restoration projects in your portfolio?
Yes, we do, and we applied Orbify technology to both.
Gotcha. Any other questions on the chat, please? Javier is asking, what is the minimum area to make a conservancy project available to get a carbon certification?
Well, this depends from the registry that you are applying to, because they all have like different standards that you need to set the project to. I mean, Verra has a certain criteria, Gold Standard has another one, so this depends according to the registry that you are applying for.
What is, I would say maybe like, what is the minimum that you have seen so far?
I would say, I don't know, because it's really, it is really different. I've seen projects that has like, I don't know, 100 hectares, and projects that have
a million.
1,100 hectares. Like it really depends.
Oliver, do you have anything to add to that?
Only that I think, shame we can't get more smaller projects involved. I think it's one of those issues that we tend to see much larger projects become certified. It costs a lot in upfront costs, and I think a lot of smaller projects struggle to get that certification or to take that upfront cost. So yeah, it's really interesting problem that we need to solve, I'd say. But yeah, I think it's very rare to see smaller projects actually.
Yeah, they'll probably. I know we've had a client in the US who had projects from like private landowners. So they're called smallholders, and their project areas were really tiny. So, but they would use the tool to monitor like the entirety of those. But I think I would say it's probably like rather not a frequent thing. We have a question from Gopi. The Miyawaki forest has been spotlight on urban afforestation. Did it really work, and any such projects that you've handled? I think it's a question for Julia.
We never worked with the Miyawaki forest so far, so we have it in pipeline. We have some ideas of adding a Miyawaki forest to our project portfolio, but for now we didn't work with that. So I don't know if I can answer to your question in details. I don't know if Oliver has ever worked with a Miyawaki forest so far. I mean, no. I know that in the countries where this practice is being implemented, success has been registered so far. So I think it's a very nice practice to try to implement in different parts of the world and see what is happening. And I think it's, kind of a very nice way to bring back nature into the urban context and to do it in a very sustainable way. That means like with effective results and effective management of the nature inside the urban context. So,
all right. Next one from Jimton. How is this applicable to plantation forestry? I wonder if there's a question about the satellite data. I think it is.
I don't know how it is split
think-
into plantations.
Yeah, I think I'm wondering. So, Jimton, please correct me if I'm wrong. Okay, yes. How is satellite data applicable to plantation forestry?
Sorry.
No, go.
I would say our platform works very well with plantation forestry. Anything that's sort of single-aged. Oh, my sound's gone. Hopefully you can still hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, good. Yes. Oh, so sorry. Yeah. So it works very well. I think, unfortunately, it works slightly better than for natural forests. So if you have plantations, yeah, we can handle those nicely, I think.
So, Miyashri, I hope I didn't butcher your name. Could you please specify what the question means? How can this be applied for different carbon projects? Do you mean different carbon projects as in like blue carbon, green carbon, like agriculture, like carbon farming and all that? Is that the essence of the question? And I'll skip it until we specify to the next one. So from Jamika, how do you actually measure the carbon credit you provide to the companies? Do you do the theoretical carbon estimate per area of forest? Julia, I would assume it's a question for you.
Okay. Well, we actually we first do a carbon audit of the company. So it means that we go and measure the carbon emission of a company. So then we calculate how many tons they want to reduce and how many tons they want to offset. And once we identify the number of tons that they want to offset, they decide the typology of project that we want to invest into, and we provide them with the carbon credits and do theoretical carbon estimate per area of forest. This is something that we measure with Orbify, meaning that we buy carbon credits and then we monitor the area related to the carbon credits, also thanks to Orbify. That gives us in real time the data about the biomass, and so that we can have an overview about the real estimate that has been done for carbon credits. I don't know if I answered the question.
In the meantime, Pedro has provided some additional insight to the earlier question about the minimum viable area for the project. So if you guys not reading the chat, the answer is it needs to be at least 10,000 hectares, but ideally 20,000. And basically, smaller projects are not very cost effective, so usually they would add up to a larger area. And I'm going to attempt to answer the question about different carbon projects as I understood it. So we have so far really specialized, for example, in forest monitoring. So anything that pertains to land monitoring. We have recently acquired capabilities to monitor mangroves, and we're also looking into algae. So we'll be able to provide capabilities when it comes to blue carbon, which will cover those two types of blue carbon, I guess. When it comes to, for example, carbon farming, so when it pertains to different methods applied by agriculture, we have not looked into that yet, but this is on our roadmap for 2024. Hopefully that answers the questions. Sorry. Fabio, the credits are only limited to carbon sequestration, not storage, right? Right, guys?
No, I mean, in the carbon credit market, you might find pretty much everything. You have different categories, and carbon sequestration, it's one of the most common one, but you can find also carbon storage. But for storage, I don't know if you are referring to the technical solutions like stocking carbon. Is that you're referring to? Like the technological solutions to absorb carbon and stock it under the Earth surface, that kind of solutions are you referring to, Fabio?
So we're basically speaking about carbon offsets in terms of nature-based solutions. Okay.
Yes, of course. I mean, in the whole in the whole analysis that then attributes credits to a project. For example, of a conservation project, it is taking into consideration the carbon that they absorb while existing, and also the carbon that they are stocking into the ground, the roots, the trunk, and the branches. So, I mean, the whole biomass.
Thank you, Julia. I'm sorry I got a bit carried away with the questions in the chat, and I didn't realize we're even already a few minutes over time. I would like to thank both of our presenters today. I think you guys done a really good job presenting the slides that you had and answering the questions. Thank you, everyone, for the questions that you have put and even for the answers. Thanks again, Pedro. We hope to see you guys in our next webinar, which is going to happen on October 16th. That will be dedicated to blue carbon. Everybody is going to get the invites pretty quickly, and you'll also get the recording of this entire session. So if you ever want to rewatch it or share it with your colleagues, it is going to be distributed tomorrow. So thank you again. We wish you a good rest of your day, whether it's morning, day, or evening, and hope to see you next time.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.